Welcome, everybody, to this week's episode of the Ninth Grade Experience podcast. I'm your host, Chris Dutchko, and today we are celebrating a birthday. Not my own personal birthday, but the second birthday of the Ninth Grade Experience podcast. Our first episodes dropped on May 17th of 2019, and today you're hearing this 2-year anniversary. This year we have members from our SOAR group, Students Organizing Against Racism, to celebrate our 2-year anniversary. And we're really excited about the episode coming up here after this brief introduction. But before we get into it, I just wanted to say thank you to everybody that's listening and that has watched over the past 2 years. I was taking a look at some of our numbers, and we are up to almost 6,500 downloads and views of the podcast on your audio podcast listening devices and on YouTube. And the YouTube channel has been a really big hit in the past year since we've kind of gone virtual here with recording people. We've been able to put all of them up on YouTube for the most part. So it's been a really great addition to the podcast. Crazy with the YouTube stats as an example. I was looking, and it says that people that have consumed the podcast on YouTube have watched 284 hours of content from the podcast. So that is the equivalent of 11 or 12 days there of just people watching stuff on the podcast. So I can't thank everybody enough for all the time that they put in. I wanted to thank everyone that's come on in the past 2 years. We've had some people within our building appear multiple times. We've had students come on, tell some great stories. We've had some people that are experts in the field join us as well too. So thanks to all the people that have made this possible throughout the 2 years here. And thanks to Dr. Kiris and to everyone that's been putting the podcast on during the advisory period during this school year. It's gotten a lot of eyes on the podcast. A lot more people have been able to be exposed to all the different awesome things that ninth graders are doing and different things related to our tech department. We've had some of our students appear on it. We've had alumni appear on it that have been on an advisory. So again, big thank you to that as well too. So this is the 70th episode of the podcast. So we're on our way to 100. That'll be during the next school year. So we're excited to see where we can take it in the future. Maybe more video, maybe more social media content, TikTok. We do have a TikTok, but I haven't posted on it yet. Ninth Grade Experience. Maybe that'll be coming next school year. We have an Instagram, we have Twitter, we have all sorts of stuff. So we're looking on how to expand and build. And if you're interested in contributing next year, just reach out to me, Mr. Stuchko, and we'll figure out how we can get you on. We have an awesome website that all the podcasts are on. It's ninthgradeexperience.com. That's been a huge boost to be able to send people to one central spot to be able to enjoy the podcast. So again, from myself and everyone that's been involved, thank you so much to everybody that's been a part of this. And every time I do a podcast, I'm excited to tell the stories of students and to kind of give a little bit more information to help with that transition from 8th to 9th grade, and when you're in 9th grade to kind of get through that school year. So we're going to jump into the episode with our students and a faculty advisor from SOAR. Just one thing, we did not have a chance to ask this question during the podcast, but all of them contributed great resources to aid in our discussion, things that you can take a look at after the podcast. And those are in the show notes, which you can see at ninthgradeexperience.com and be able to find it on the episode there. And it's also available like on the Apple, iTunes, or a podcast app and Spotify and everywhere else. So lots of links, lots of great material. So hopefully everyone enjoys this a super important conversation with members of our SOAR group. And it's much needed, and it's a great second year anniversary topic to have a pretty serious discussion here about things that are going on in the school district. So once again, thank you to everybody. And here is today's episode. Welcome, everybody, to this week's episode of the Ninth Grade Experience podcast. This is a special episode here. This is going to come out on the 2-year anniversary of the podcast. So I'm really excited to feature our guest on the show today for our 2-year anniversary, kind of, again, talking about different things that are going on here at Emmaus High School and kind of hitting on important issues to our students and staff here at the high school. So I'm joined today by the advisor and 2 of the founding members of the SOAR group, which is Students Organizing Against Racism. So we have Mrs. Magro representing the advisor role here. And then we have Tami, Adesanya, and Brassy Ford. Tami is the treasurer, and Brassy is the secretary of the organization. So thanks a lot, everybody, for joining us today.
Thank you for inviting us on.
So before we get into what SOAR is, we always ask every new guest, and all three of you are new to the show, what their ninth grade experience was like. And just to go through a little bit, so we have two students here currently at the end of their ninth grade year. So hopefully they have some good recollections on what this year has been like. And then we have Mrs. Magro, who is an Emmaus High School graduate, who she told us before the show. So since Mrs. Magro is unmuted, we will let her go first. And again, like we always tell the adults, you never have to say what year you graduated, but we do know you're an EHS grad. So what was your ninth grade experience like?
So I'm fine. I graduated in 04. When I started high school, I was completely overwhelmed. I remember the school felt absolutely enormous. I remember being late to class because of how long it took to walk across the campus. And I remember reading Romeo and Juliet in ninth grade English. I don't remember much else about my freshman year that was academic related. I remember my social life, and I remember I definitely was not like aware of my racial identity as a white person. Like I was not woke in ninth grade at all. So I'll say that.
It's funny. I was actually thinking, I forgot to identify. Mrs. Magro is the librarian at Eyer Middle School. So if you're a ninth grader here and you were at Eyer, I'm sure you ran into her at some point if she was picking out a good book for you or recommending research or whatever she was doing. I was going to actually ask you that follow-up question about if there was something in your ninth grade year that kind of did lead you at some point to kind of get involved with the kind of work that you're helping the students with in this group. Was there something maybe that you remember? You kind of said you didn't really identify with anything in particular, but looking back on it, is there, maybe it was that lack of not thinking about it, maybe is kind of like leading you to kind of help out now?
So I did so much of my learning outside of school. I don't think that's changed for a lot of, young people now. Like we pursue our own passions and interests. And I always loved books. I know no one will be surprised to hear that. So I've always loved to read books about cultures different from my own. I really love a lot of authors who happen to be like Indian American or Chinese. I love graphic novels. I'm just very curious. And one of my favorite authors is an Afro-Dominican poet, Elizabeth Acevedo. I really love to just learn about the world. So all I can say is that I've always been really curious about people, and I like to listen. I love to listen to interviews, and that's always been true. So yeah.
All right. So Tami or Brassy, whoever wants to go first, can you tell us how your ninth grade year has been? A ninth grade year like no one has had before, and hopefully no one will have after us with all the different things going on. But how has your ninth grade year been?
Okay.
So this is Brassy talking, just so we know. If you're watching the video, you can see that. But if you're listening at home, I'm just want to let you know who's talking when. So go ahead, Brassy.
My ninth grade year has been, I would say, good. Like I've had my fair share of troubles, but so far, it's been good. I've realized that you've had to kind of take it up on your own to kind of help yourself, or else you're gonna get lost in all the work and like stress that comes with it. But so far, it's been good.
Have you been hybrid, remote, 5-day? How have you been coming into the building, or have you come in at all?
I came once and then I chose to do online because, well, actually I didn't choose. My mom thought it would be safer.
So you didn't really have a ninth grade experience of coming into the building, like maybe that, like back in August, maybe that one day you came in, but other than that, you've been fully remote. So next year will kind of be a ninth grade year for you, kind of coming into the building for the first time, doing all that kind of stuff. So how about you, Tami? How has your ninth grade year been? And are you been remote or hybrid, or what have you been, how you been accessing school?
I started off the year remote. I mean, hybrid. Yeah, I started off hybrid until like December, and then I switched to remote for the rest of the year. And it's been pretty good overall. I joined a couple clubs like the BSU and SOAR, of course, and Kid to Kid as well, and they've all gone pretty smoothly. I overall did enjoy my year though.
So that's, one of the things we always talk about on the show, if you've listened to it, is how we always encourage students to get involved. So you talked about the 3 organizations you were a part of. Brassy, did you join any other organizations or clubs or any other extracurricular activities during the year?
Yeah, I'm also in Kid to Kid and Black Student Union. I also was on the track team.
Cool. So you got a chance to, at least when come here and participate. And I know their season just ended. Of course, when the weather starts to get really nice is when they finally end track, right? I'm sure there were days, I work with Mr. Labar, who's the jumps coach. And, there were days when it was like 30 degrees and raining. And I'm like, oh, that's not fun. So sorry you're missing out on the nice weather now with the track program. But again, the both of you are kind of great examples here of getting involved, and it was tougher to get involved this year. And I think that's one of the things that will kind of come up during our conversation here about how we can get students to focus and care about some of your issues here. But SOAR is a new organization here in the East Penn School District. And if you want to find out a lot more about the backstory of SOAR, which we're going to give a little bit of it here, but Tami, along with Sydney Clark, who is the president of SOAR, did a great interview with the Stinger, our school newspaper. It was almost an hour long, where they talked a lot about the background and the details and all that stuff. So we're going to touch on it here, but I would absolutely recommend that you go listen to that interview as well too. But if you can just give us a little bit here for people that are listening and may not have heard of what SOAR is, whoever wants to kind of give the information or the background, what is SOAR and how did it kind of come to be an organization here at Emmaus High School?
Okay, so SOAR started off as like a small group of 8 to 10 people, and it consisted of Mrs. Magro, a librarian at Eyer, some parents, some Emmaus High School alumni, and we all kind of just met on the weekends and talked about how we could better the district. And then I think we became an official club not too long ago, but I personally joined in October-ish, when there was 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 people at most. And we kind of just met and talked about what were our goals, and we came up with a list of asks that we wanted to present to the board members whenever we could.
Yeah, so it's also really been a focus to help students develop a positive racial identity, and to ensure that we are not ignoring the fact that race is a part of our daily lived experiences. So a lot of the time, adults are way more uncomfortable speaking about race than students are. And we want to try to change that narrative and help people be comfortable talking about race and racism, because that's how we're going to really start to change the issues that we have across our society, certainly not just in our district.
It's interesting. We're starting off trying to focus on the East Penn School District and things that are going on within the district. And then kind of looking, there are so many events in the last, let's say 18 months that kind of have shown a spotlight on lots of different topics regarding all these different issues. So it's in the media as a whole. And in our world as a whole. But I think one of the things that we're going to really talk about today is how do we focus on these things within our own school community, and how do we get students involved and getting students to care, and maybe some of the buzzwords and kind of trying to get people to kind of learn a little bit more about your organization and kind of what can we do to kind of work with that. So I think one of the things that is important to kind of touch on at the beginning here, and just kind of to create a common language or common, some common words here, and the words that are kind of thrown around a whole lot. And I think if we could help students to understand a couple of the words here, then I think it would be really helpful to kind of think about how they could then be a part of this organization. So the 2 words I wanted to focus on were anti-racist and ally. And one of the things that I have a definition here, and you can tell me if it's good, bad, indifferent here. And I took it from the book Stamped: Racism, Anti-Racism, and You. It's written by Jason Reynolds and Ibram X. Kendi. It's kind of an adapted version. It's actually a really awesome version of Ibram Kendi's book stamped that is like a humongous book.
Yes.
But the stamped, that version with Jason Reynolds takes it and compacts it to almost like a high school-ish version of it. He tries to, add in different stories and stuff. And it came up on Kindle, and I was like, all right, I'm going to read this. And, I pulled this stuff out, but I like his definition here.
There's a brand new one that's for kids too, that just came out. So it's going to be for more like 7th grade and younger. But yes, I listened to the audiobook of that. Love it.
So here's the definition that I have of an anti-racist from this book. And then you can tell me how we can help students understand what it is. So he says in the book, an anti-racist idea is any idea that suggests that racial groups are equals. So here's the 3 things. So anti-racists try to transform racism, assimilationists try to transform Black people, and the segregationists try to get away from Black people. So we are obviously striving here for an anti-racist point of view where we're trying to transform racism. So what does that mean? If I'm a 15-year-old 9th grade high school student listening to this is like one of the $1 million questions here. What does that mean to me? And obviously Tami and Brassy have, they're really talking about this, and like, what does that mean to you? And then trying to explain that to our 700 freshmen and our 2,700 other students here at Emmaus High School.
To me, anti-racist means to, recognize your privilege and also use the privilege that you have to help others that don't have it. And I think that kind of goes a part of being like an ally as well. But first you have to be obviously anti-racist to become an ally.
I feel as though to like be anti-racist, you have to be aware of what's going on around you and aware that there is racism out there, and acknowledge it and accept it. And then after you do that, you can proceed with trying to change it, or at least fix it or make it slightly more pleasurable for people of color, because I don't know if it can ever be fixed, but that's what we're striving for, obviously.
So how does your group, how does your group help our students here at Emmaus High School and beyond? Maybe, hopefully your group has some far reach. I know you're working with lots of community members and other stuff. And I know from the other interview, there's some collaboration with maybe some other schools as well too. So how do you get a 15-year-old or a 16-year-old that's, all wrapped up in themselves and wants to look good on Instagram and, wants to record the next TikTok video and doesn't think about this stuff on their day-to-day basis? How do you get somebody to think about these things in a constructive way instead of it like feeling like not necessarily attacked, but like, how do you make people aware of it as a student? Like, what can you all do? I know a lot of the other conversation was like the top down approach and getting teachers to focus on it, which is great. And like that interview was fantastic to detail a lot of that stuff. But I'm kind of curious as to like, when you're in your group or in the organization, like what can we do, or what can you all do, or what can we help you do to get students to understand this?
I think that it starts, like I was saying to Miss Magro, that it starts from when, children are young, and it can be anti-racist can be taught from a very young age and can be brought up, and you can expand on it. But right now, I feel like to get people's attention, for people to acknowledge racism, first of all, would be like social media. I know in 2020, like a lot of people were more aware of what's been happening around their surroundings because it's all broadcasted on social media, and that's where like 95% of the society spends their time.
So I think that's a good point, Brassy. I think language is really important. I think if students don't have the language to understand when they're hearing something biased or racist, it's impossible for them to disrupt it, right? So we want to start with, from kindergarten on, being really comfortable talking about the very obvious differences between all of us. Perhaps especially in a predominantly white district like ours. And you then need to communicate your values really clearly and consistently so that a student is more uncomfortable making racist jokes than people are comfortable doing those things. And I don't know that that's always the case right now, but I think we can get there. One of the things we want to do is visit students at other East Penn schools to do anti-bias workshops. Like, you know, here are some ways you can interrupt something if you hear something or if you see something happening. I think that a lot of us, adults included, maybe we hear something in the faculty room or the hallway and we don't know what to say, but we know that it was wrong and made us uncomfortable. We all need to really practice being uncomfortable so that our students of color and our few teachers of color that we do have are not doing all of that labor themselves.
And then I also feel like for people who are our age who want to move forward and try to become better individuals, they either have to be self-educated, because that goes a long way. But if they don't have the capacity to do that, it also goes along with the teachers teaching it in class to them, because there's no way that people who are uninterested or uneducated are going to go and educate themselves without someone pushing them to do that for them. So I think it's very important that you are, one, self-educated if you feel it's necessary, and two, that teachers will also push their students to be self-educated and educate them themselves.
And I think that's a great point you raise about like needing to kind of, you have to personally kind of figure out, like, is this important to you? And that's one of the things as a teacher we always battle with anything, whether it's science, whether it's algebra, whether it's, you know, Mrs. Magro talked about Romeo and Juliet. I'm sure our 2 ninth graders here have read it during the course of the year here. And it may, you know, it's been around for what, 500 years now. So people have been reading it for a long time. So, you know, trying to figure out like, how does this apply to me, and working on these different things and getting it to apply to, you know, how do you fit in? And there was so much good stuff there that I want to kind of revisit. One of the other books that I read during the last couple of months was Uncomfortable Conversations with a Black Man, which was written by Emmanuel Acho, who also has a kid's version of his book that just came out and is on the bestseller list. Inside note, I tried to get him on the podcast, and apparently he got too busy when he decided to start hosting The Bachelor and going on all sorts of national podcasts. So if somehow Emmanuel Acho listens to this, the invitation's open again. But at least I did get a response back from his publicist, so that was kind of nice. I was not even expecting that, but I did reach out to him, and I have the email to prove it. But when I read that book, it was written in a way where it was literally like, here's a situation, here's the solution. We're going to talk very real about this. And it was just kind of like the whole idea of having the uncomfortable conversation. And I know part of your focus at SOAR is like helping, like you're advocating for teachers to kind of get the training on how to have those uncomfortable conversations, which I hope is coming in our district. And I believe that it is, you know, through some things that I've heard, and hopefully that will be forthcoming. But my question to you is, so how, as like ninth grade students, like when you, like, how do you get to, or how do you feel that you can learn to have those uncomfortable conversations with your peers? Like, as an example, if you hear something, or, you know, if I'm like a student in a group and I hear something and I think that it's offensive, or I don't think that it's right, do you have any suggestions for me as ninth grade student? How do I approach that? It's a really tough thing, and I'm not expecting you to have the magic answer, but like, do you have any suggestions or things maybe that you've encountered or had to have those tough conversations with your friends or in other groups, or anything, like different ways that you would suggest for students to be like, hey man, that's wrong, like, and this is why?
Well, first of all, love the book. I have it right next to me. I'm in the middle of it. And second, for students to like learn, they have to like learn how to speak with their peers. I feel like it comes easier for me because I'm a person of color, and it's like I know where people go wrong in these types of scenarios, and I'm like, that's not all right, and I feel more comfortable talking about it. But for students who want to be allies, it comes with having someone you can talk to that may be an adult who can kind of guide you and be your mentor in that aspect, because most of these like conversations can be taught, so you know how to handle it, which I think an anti-racist workshop would definitely help with, for students who know that there is something like wrong, they've experienced something or encountered something that was like very much like offensive to someone, and they want to jump in at that point. So to do that, you have to kind of have a mentor, or you should have a mentor who can guide you along the right path.
I think that the worst thing you can do is to not say anything at all. I think that once you acknowledge it, even just a small like, hey, that's not okay, that goes a long way. Because when it goes without being noticed, or if it's ignored, they can do it again and again, which is what has happened multiple times.
And it's interesting you bring that up because I work in special education, and obviously there are words that kids use on a daily basis that they don't think much about, like the R word and those kinds of words as well too. And they don't, I'm not trying to draw an exact comparison, but these are words that, in our society that we don't like allow people to use. And then we hear students using them and it's like, hey, like, this is why we can't use these words anymore. And sometimes they don't know. And sometimes they just choose to do whatever they're going to do. But it's hard even as an adult sometimes to initiate those conversations. And, I've spent the last 15 years working in special education. I know the words in that field that are offensive to people. And, sometimes when you hear it, it's just like, did that person really just say that? Like, now I have to like go and we have to have a conversation about that. But it's really interesting. Like in the last little bit, I've actually heard not related to like racial like words and kind of conversations like that. But I've heard some conversations with students, and I heard a student actually say, hey, that's not right. And even small examples of like just figuring out like that it's okay to say things aren't right, and you shouldn't feel like you're going to have to get into a fight about it. Like, I know one of the things that you talked about in the Stinger interview was like, if a teacher wants to intervene, they shouldn't feel like their job is in jeopardy. But for students, I think it's a little bit more, obviously it's not that we're not at that level yet, but they do feel that like, if I stick up for student X, are the rest of the people in my group going to like me? What is that going to do? So I think that kind of influences a lot. So I think the things that you're saying there about, standing up for people, like, again, like Brassy said, like when you see something, like you got, like, we have to begin to teach people how to stand up and say like, hey, that's wrong. And you might be in the minority about trying to be that person, but I think it's such a valuable skill to have. And, as adults, we're kind of dealing with that all the time too. I know Mrs. Magro kind of wanted to jump in there as well. I saw her, I think right before I started talking, she was getting ready to jump in.
That's okay. I was just going to say the other tool I've found that's like really simple and really effective is asking people to repeat themselves, especially if it's like they're telling a really bad joke, or like they say something really outdated. You can say, can you say that again? Or you can ask a question like, can you explain why you just said that? Or tell me more about why you think that. And it turns it on to them to have to explain themselves. And usually they'll realize that they did something in that moment that they really shouldn't have done. Usually they know it while they're saying it. But if we don't ever stop people, we keep ignoring it. That's what gives that stuff power. And so the more you speak about something, the less power it holds.
So I want to ask another, so we've had a nice conversation here about anti-racist. That was my first word. And then I'm not going to spoil the book for you, Tami, but on page 178 of the Uncomfortable Conversations book, I think Emmanuel, he defines being an ally in 4 words. And all he says is just keep showing up, which I thought was a great definition for it. I know that like people are very confused about what it means to be an ally. And at the beginning of our conversation, we talked about you kind of have to be anti-racist first before you can become an ally. So let's just assume that we've done the work where we are knowledgeable, we're anti-racist, we're working towards that. What does it mean, in your opinion, as high school students, to be an ally? Like, what are you looking for in an ally? And like, I assume that anyone can be an ally, whether you're a high school student, a middle school student, an adult, all those different things. Like, if we're just using maybe you have a more detailed definition than just showing up, but I don't know when we're talking about ally, I think that's another one of the buzzwords thrown around a lot, but what does it mean to be an ally?
For me, I don't think it means like, like I don't think to be an ally you need to like show up to a Black Lives Matter protest. I just think that it's being aware and like recognizing your privilege, and then also acknowledging the little things that happen in your surroundings. For me, I think that it's very hard for some people to recognize their privilege that they hold, and doing that means you have taken the time out of your day to not only look on your side but also the other side and put yourself in others' shoes.
I think that to piggyback a little bit off of what Brassy said and what we were talking about before, that you just kind of have to be willing to stand up for people of color and different racist experiences that they're having, whether it's on social media or it's in person or whatever, wherever it is, online, whatever. You just need to be willing to step forward and put a foot down, like this is not right, and kind of know that it's like using your identity to help other people, which is a really big part of it.
And then how about from your perspective, Mrs. Magro, like in the organization, or kind of how are you helping, or it's, kind of leading that charge of like, either shaping allies or finding allies, or how are you kind of as the advisor kind of helping along with that part of it?
Yeah, so I think I really try to just empower the students to be confident and to speak up for themselves and share their experiences when appropriate. I think a big thing is not to confuse being an ally with being like a white savior and being the white person who's sort of like speaking for students of color or people of color instead of speaking with them and amplifying what they are saying. So I always, for example, make sure to like give credit to the ideas I'm sharing. They usually don't originate with me. And I've also partnered with a Black East Penn parent, Shanta Ford, not Brassy's mom, different Ford, to lend support with SOAR, because I feel like in a multiracial organization, which SOAR is, we have students from lots of different racial identities. Me as a white woman, I am not enough to support the students. And I really appreciate that in East Penn, we have such an incredible community. We can, build partnerships with nonprofits, with local universities, with parents. And I think that's a big piece of it too, is helping our students to understand the influence they can have at this age by just empowering and amplifying their voices. So for me, being an ally has really looked like listening first and then figuring out how to help them take action and empowering them to do that.
And I think what you said is so important. Like this may be the man thing in me here, and sorry as the man, like, the only man here, but like, I feel like oftentimes when people come to me with problems, like I feel like I need to fix them. And this is a problem that like, I can't like wave a wand and fix myself. Like like we're saying, like we all have to work in partnership and we have to kind of work together on all this. And I'm not here to like, I can't like, I want to do my small part or my big part or whatever part it's going to be. But like to go in with it with that mindset that like all of a sudden, like you're going to be the person that solves this massive problem, like it's just not realistic. But I think one of the things that I really appreciate about SOAR and what you're talking about is, one of what you said consistently in the interview with the Stinger was your club is there to take action and to kind of to do stuff. And I think we talked a lot today about like how you want to have people be confident and have a voice and share conversations and those kinds of things. So I would ask, like, what is the action moving forward that your club is looking to take with, especially with students? And I know we've, a lot of conversation about like what you're expecting out of the teachers and the district and those kinds of things. But as you take this like next year, and I'll hopefully cross our fingers, we're all back together in the same building and whatever we're doing, masks, no masks, whatever we're doing. But we're all back together. And I know how hard it's been. I advise 2 other clubs as well too. And, getting people involved online has been difficult. You're starting a brand new club. You've gotten people to join. But when we come back together next year, what are you hoping to accomplish through SOAR? Like, how are you going to, quote, take action when you get back together and you can have everyone meet in one spot?
Well, I think that for students, it can be either a safe environment where they can come to like share their stories or their experiences, or it can be a place where allies, or you can learn how to become a better ally and you can do more. Because, sometimes you want to do more, but you don't know how to.
Thank you, Brassy. I love that.
And then as for appealing to the students, we definitely probably get our name somewhere on the website with the other clubs if possible, and maybe be in the announcements or something as new clubs to join. But I do know that we did get a lot of members rapidly when we first started. So it's a lot of people that were coming in and a lot of people were interested. So definitely putting ourselves out there on the website and kind of making our name known or our organization known for people who are interested in learning and also taking action in the district.
I think we've also talked about doing fun events we have a lot of writers in our club. So a poetry slam was talked about, hopefully to raise money for a cause that aligns with our organization's goals. And then we also, like I said, do want to visit other schools and grade levels to talk about race and racism and how to interrupt bias. I don't think, our students are ready to have those conversations. I don't think we have to wait for everyone else to be there. And I think, like Brassy said, we really want to help students understand what anti-racism looks and feels like, because it should feel like a daily practice.
And I think those are all really good things to consider, moving forward, trying to take action and moving your organization ahead. I think it's a really telling that in such a short period of time, you had such interest. And again, it's at the time of the year when I know in the clubs that I advise, our people that are caring are going down through no fault of their own. They're just tired of being on Zoom. But you all are starting a brand new organization here through Zoom, and you're getting, growth. And I think people are finally starting to realize, hopefully in our schools and in our district, kind of the importance of all this. So I wanted to take a second and thank you all for coming and talking to me and sharing all the different thoughts. I have one final question for you. And again, you have been nothing but honest. So again, you can be as honest as you want with this question. So here it is. So I am actually a newly minted member of the Emmaus High School equity team. Now I haven't been to a meeting yet. So I don't I've kind of heard about the work that they do. I know where we're going. So here's my question to you. And you could tell the people there, and you've told a lot of people what you believe and all the different stuff, which is fantastic. But I'm going to this equity meeting for the first time in 2 weeks, and I'm going to be sitting in there. If you had a question, a message, something that you would like to share specifically with those people, it's people from the high school. It's not a district-wide thing. So people from the high school, if you wanted to share one thought, one message, one question. I know you shared your asks at the district level, but what should I take to that meeting from SOAR, from what your experiences have been? What is it that if I'm going to try to help be an ally or help to get people learning more about the things that you talked about today, what should I tell them? What should I ask them? What should I try to get them to understand?
Okay, so I feel like the district has to get mad because this stuff is happening to students every single day, and it's stuff that they can't stop. It's not like they can just change it, or they can just change their identity and wipe everything away, wipe their past away, wipe their history away. So you have to get mad, because if these students can't fight for themselves and they're not confident enough to fight for themselves, that's your job. So going into that meeting, I would say they need to be a little less nonchalant and be a little bit more aggressive towards this, because this type of stuff is happening every single day and to many students. And we can't just focus on a majority of the students and leave out a specific group of students, because that's you're just leaving them out to dry. They don't matter everything's okay. If this part of everyone is okay, it doesn't matter what's going on over here. The majority's all right, that's okay. But that's not how it should be. We need to better the district as a whole and worry about all the students, because all these students have potential to be great, but you're just like, there's pain over here that is not allowing them to have rest of mind and a free conscience. So I feel as though you need to get mad and like try to fix this, be more aggressive towards like, where's the passion? The passion needs to be there in order to make things better.
Well, I was going to say that I feel like it's important that they don't shy away from racism and be direct with it, because it's very common for them to turn it into something that it's not and turn it into something else. And it's important because they're not the ones that are getting affected, and they can't act as if it's not as important as what I would think, because I'm the one that's getting affected. The students are, potentially the teachers are, and for them to just sit there and, like what Tami said, to be nonchalant, it's not them that are getting affected. So they have to be mindful of that and to listen to their students. So I think it's important that they don't shy away from the topic of racism and not to be afraid to be very blunt with it, because if you treat it like it's some type of glass that you don't want to break, you can't be too delicate with it, because people, think that you're being weak. And like Tami said, you have to be strong and passionate about it. You can't just do it because we're telling you to, but you have to do it because you want to do it. But yeah, I think that's important.
And I like that how you ended it there with saying like it's something that we want, something that you want to have to do. And I hope that, sitting in that committee and hopefully getting to hear that, like I know that I wanted to be a part of it because it's something that I want to do. I wasn't originally on it. I asked to be on it. So hopefully, I can take some of the words that you said in this interview, in the Stinger interview, and some of the other stuff that you've done here. And then, anything from Mrs. Magro as well, to kind of take to that meeting and be like, hey, like this is what students are saying. And I think one of the great things that, I love about the podcast here is that giving voice to ninth graders. And you've come on today, you've represented your organization so well. Like, you speak about the issues, like, what's going on, how it's affecting you. Like, I don't live in the same world that you do. And we've talked about that so much today, is like, being an ally doesn't mean that I'm going to try to save the world, but just kind of giving everyone a chance to have these conversations, to, put the stuff out there, and then hopefully being able to act upon that with, different members of the faculty and staff here at EHS in this, this meeting, that we can move the ball forward for everybody here. I know you all are looking for immediate action. I know, hopefully we will be able to do that to the best of our ability, to help that along too. So Mrs. Magro, is there anything else you wanted to add in there?
I would just say there's often pushback to this work. And I think the most important thing is to know your values and to communicate them clearly and consistently, to be vocal. And hopefully the core of those values is just to recognize the full humanity of all of our students.
All right. So I think that's a great spot to end it here. Valuing every student here at Emmaus High School, I think, is something that I don't think that should take a whole lot of convincing, that we should be able to value every student here at Emmaus High School. So I think this is an awesome episode to share on the 2-year anniversary of the podcast. When I kind of came up with this crazy idea 2 years ago, I was hoping to have conversations like this. They're not necessarily always this deep, but I think, in 2 years, we've seen this come to the forefront here. And, this is something that I feel is important to share. So I'm glad that we had students that came on. I'm glad Mrs. Magro had a chance to come on here as well too. And, if hopefully, whatever willing, I'm back here for next year and we're doing this again. And, there's always an open microphone, an open Zoom spot, an open whatever for you all to come back here. And if you need help getting the word out about anything, feel free to always come back to the 9th grade experience. Even if you're in 10th grade, we will get you on. We'll find some 9th graders in your group that kind of want to talk to. So thanks to Mrs. Magro, thanks to Tami, and thanks to Brassy for joining us here. And thanks a lot.
Thank you. This was really fun.